In this video, we're going to cover what some people call lead-ins. I call them modifier issues because that's really the correct grammar involved here. It's dependent clause in this case, comma, and then an underlined section which has to be a noun. And we want to find what noun is being modified by the dependent clause. So yeah, that is leading into the sentence, which is why they call it lead-ins. But the grammar issue here is one of a correct modifier. All dependent clauses modify another word in the sentence. It may be as an adjective, it may be as an adverb or other form of speech. In our case, it's generally going to be an adjective modifying the noun that follows that introductory dependent clause. There's no grammar reason why it has to be structured this way as a lead-in. It could be anywhere. In fact, I'd like to see them mix it up because those who are so focused on lead-ins and not the grammar issue would be thrown into chaos. Nonetheless, let's look at this problem. How do we identify it? Well, I'm looking for that dependent clause, comma, and underlined structure. So I can see the underlined, the comma, and the beginning dependent clause from here to the comma. That's a dead giveaway. This is a modifier question. Also, the answer choices are much longer. So that's another way we can figure it out. They're not simply verb, 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 or similar words with just slightly modified punctuation, all in a parallel structure. They're kind of sentences on their own. Another way to notice that this is a modifier question is the answers all begin with nouns: fossils, Anna Berensmeyer, analysis. And then we always get this strange, unusual sentence. It's usually passive, and it's not a noun, and it's therefore never the right answer. Occasionally we see a possessive answer. And again, these are all ways to confirm that you're looking at a modifier type question. So once we've identified the question among our various grammar questions, how do we go about solving it? I want to know what noun in the answer choice is being modified by the clause. A pioneer in the field of taxonomy, the study of how organic remains become fossils. So who or what could be a pioneer in the field? Would fossils be a pioneer in a field? No, of course not. Could an analysis be a pioneer in a field? No, definitely not. That's not right either. How about this passive sentence? It was demonstrated in a 2005 analysis that, would that be a pioneer in a field? No, absolutely not. How about Anna Berensmeyer? Yes, Anna Berensmeyer could be a pioneer in a field. That would be the right noun that's being modified by the dependent clause before it. That's the right answer. So first thing I want to know is, how do I identify that this is a lead-in or a modifier question? I'll note that all my answers are much longer. They begin with nouns: Morocco, Chiribi's debut novel, Chiribi, and one of them has the possessive. And I notice it has this dependent clause, comma, underlined structure. So I've got my underline, I see the comma, and I see that starting the sentence with this dependent clause from here to the comma. This is going to be a modifier question. So the goal here is to figure out what noun is being modified by the phrase or clause before it. A coming-of-age story, a social meditation, a sober gaze into the dark maw of French colonialism. Is that Morocco? Is Morocco a coming-of-age story, a social meditation? I don't think so. That's not right. How about Chiribi? Is Chiribi a sober gaze, a social meditation? No, that's not right either. How about this verb answer? There's always a strange verb answer in there, most of the time actually. Published 2 years ago before Morocco gained its independence. Well, no, that's not a noun, which is what needs to be modified. And it's certainly not a social meditation or sober gaze. This is always the wrong answer. Chiribi's debut novel. The noun to be modified here is the novel, the debut novel. Is that a coming-of-age story, a social meditation, a sober gaze into colonialism? Yes, of course, that's correct. It's Chiribi's debut novel. Notice the possessive answer here is the one that's correct. Let's see yet another example. Okay, how do I identify this is a modifier question? Well, again, I've got the longer answers, pretty much sentences by themselves. They all seem to begin with nouns. One's possessive. And I've got the classic structure, a dependent clause up front, comma, and then the underline. So whatever this clause or phrase is, what noun is it modifying compared to that of alumina glass? Silica glass atoms are, so this is an interesting one. This is a little different than our other examples. We've got comparison to that of. Always take note of those words. If we see that of or those of, really essentially, we're not looking at alumina glass as the noun for comparison. It's some attribute. It's that of, those of. You might ask, well, what of alumina glass? Well, some attribute. We don't know what that attribute is quite yet, but we can figure it out. The attribute is going to be in the next part of the sentence. It's going to be the glass atoms are so far apart, they're unable to form bonds. So it's something about the form of the atoms. That's the attribute we're trying to make the comparison to. It always has to be like-to-like items. So is the dependent clause up front modifying silica glass in A or B? No, that's the incorrect noun. That's not the right noun. Alumina glass directly to silica glass. It's that of alumina glass, some attribute, basically the form of the bonds. Let's look at C. A significant disadvantage. Well, that is an attribute. Disadvantage is an attribute of silica glass, but it's not the right attribute. The attribute should be the form of the atoms that cannot bond. That's the attribute described in the sentence above. Now, you might think that's a disadvantage, but it doesn't say disadvantage, so that's not right. C is incorrect. D, silica glass's atomic arrangement is more dispersed. Yes, the that of, the those of, the attribute we're trying to compare here that's being modified by the clause is the atomic arrangement. That's the noun. So we're comparing alumina glass's atomic arrangement. Now note, it didn't say that, it just said that of. But I could substitute, instead of that of, I could substitute atomic arrangement. Compared to the atomic arrangement of alumina glass, silica glass's atomic arrangement is more dispersed. We're comparing like-to-like things, so that's very important. Whenever you see the words that of, those of, or similar references, note you're not looking at the noun itself, you're looking at some type of attribute. And this reminds me of the comparison questions from the old writing and language exam. Whenever we had comparison, we had to compare like to like objects. And a good example of that is between dance and martial arts. You compare dance to martial arts. You might compare dancers to martial artists. And you might compare those moves of dance to those, essentially moves without even saying it, of martial arts. You would not compare martial arts to the moves of dance. They would not be like-to-like things. So make sure you're comparing like-to-like things. That will help you out on questions like this.